God of War Ragnarok is finally upon us, and that's why you're probably here. Whether you've never played any before and just want to know about the events leading up to the current game, or just want a refresher before diving in, here is a recap of the games leading up to this moment. Zeus had heard of the prophecy that the fall of Olympus would be at the hands of a marked warrior, thus sending his children Ares and Athena to find and capture them. They believed it to be a young Spartan boy with a birthmark named Deimos. They were to take him with them, but Deimos' older brother Kratos attempted to stop them from getting away. This caused the scar on his face, and as Ares was about to kill him, Athena reasoned with her brother and let him go. But in honor of his brother, Kratos also gets the same birthmarks tattooed on him. Years later, Kratos grows into a Spartan general who would lead his army into many victorious battles, making him drunk with power and giving him the feeling that he was unstoppable. But one day, in a battle with Ulrich the barbarian king, that almost came to a halt, but Kratos called upon Ares to help rid him of his enemies.
Ares! Destroy my enemies, and my life is yours!
In exchange, Kratos was to devote himself as a servant to him, and the Blades of Chaos were then bound to him. Kratos was now in servitude to him and killed many for his sake. But then Ares tasked him to burn down a village to the ground. Little did he know that in the wake of slaughtering the innocent, he accidentally killed his own wife and daughter, who he did not know were present there. The oracle of the village cursed him, and thus his skin was now infused with the ashes of his loved ones to serve as a reminder for what he had done for the rest of his days. Following their death, Kratos sought out revenge on the god for tricking him into killing his family, but needless to say, this was not going to be easy. Because he was an oathbreaker, the Furies were sent on him by Ares to capture him, but Orcos, the son of Ares and Alecto, the queen of the Furies, betrayed them as well and assisted Kratos in his journey. Orcos was a disappointment to his parents, as the sole reason they had him was to breed a warrior capable of dethroning Zeus, overthrowing Olympus, and allowing Ares to take it all for himself. This was always Ares' goal, and why he decided to aid Kratos in the first place. Orcos sends Kratos to Delphi to seek answers to free himself from Ares and retrieve some of the memories the Furies were hiding from him. The Oracle of Delphi tells him that the only way to do so would be by killing the Furies. He eventually gets captured and tortured for some time, but soon breaks free. Then, one by one he hunts them down and kills them, even after their attempts to create illusions to lure him to a false sense of peace. Once they are dealt with, Kratos makes his way home to Sparta, where Orcos tells him that the only way to break free from both their shackles is by killing him. Orcos offers up the blade to Kratos and embraces his death. Then suddenly, all the haunting visions return, making Kratos now set out to forget once again, leaving Orcos and his home behind. Kratos has now been serving the gods for some time, 5 years to be exact. He was sent to Attica to aid the people in a fight against the Persians. After killing the Persian king, he also brings an end to the basilisk terrorizing the city. Shortly after, the sun disappears, leaving the land in darkness. That is when he makes his way through the city of Marathon and talks to Athena through her statue. She tells him that this was due to the disappearance of the god of the sun, Helios, and that Morpheus, the god of dreams, has a grip on the gods, causing them to fall into a deep slumber. Athena requests he go find him. Kratos begrudgingly agrees to yet another request. During his journey, he is reminded of his daughter Calliope, and after killing Charon the ferryman, he follows what seems to be his daughter through another temple. This leads him directly towards Persephone, the wife of Hades. She offers Kratos to see his daughter again, but at the cost of losing all his abilities and letting the world suffer. He understands, but does not care, and chooses this path anyway. He walks through the Elysian Fields, essentially a sort of paradise, where he is finally reunited with Calliope. That is when Persephone reveals that she is the one who released the Titan Atlas, who was responsible for Helios' disappearance. Her goal was to destroy everyone, including herself, due to the grudge she holds towards both Zeus and Hades. But she also tricked Kratos because even though he had the chance to reunite with his daughter, eventually the fields along with everyone in it would be destroyed too. Kratos then makes the choice to sacrifice whatever time he would have had left with Calliope and goes off to stop Persephone, also regaining his powers and weapons along the way. During his fight with Persephone, he chains up Atlas and then kills her with the gauntlet of Zeus. He then converses with Atlas and decides that trusting the gods is all he has left and returns Helios to the sky as promised. Sailing through the Aegean Sea, Kratos' ship gets attacked by Ares' forces and kills the Hydra. Athena appears with one last request: save her city from her brother in exchange for the nightmares he wishes to forget. Kratos finds the Oracle of Athens, who tells him that opening Pandora's box will unleash the power to kill a god and is stored in Pandora's temple, which is on Kratos' back in the middle of the Desert of Lost Souls. Kratos spends most of the game making his way there, and once he does and recovers the box, Ares is able to sense this from Athens and picks up a broken pillar. He throws it and it flies through the city, across the desert, and straight through Kratos' body, impaling him and thus killing him. Ares then commands the Harpies to take the box with them, and Kratos wakes up in the underworld. But this does not stop Kratos because he manages to escape. Knocking the box out of Ares' grasp, he opens it and becomes just as large as Ares himself. The two duel, but as Kratos begins to overwhelm Ares, he creates illusions of his family to attempt to torture him mentally and kill him with his guard down. However, Kratos sees through this and grabs the Blade of the Gods, which was hidden as a bridge, and finally pierces the blade through Ares. Now with Athens saved and Ares defeated, he asks Athena and the gods to hold their end of the deal, but they simply tell him that while he is cleansed of his sins, they did not promise to wipe his memories. Hearing this makes Kratos feel defeated. He heads up a cliff overlooking the Aegean Sea and lets himself fall, but Athena saves him and tells him that Ares' throne is now vacant, and thus he takes his place as the new god of war. Since his nightmares were not taken away from him, he begins to have visions of his past and his mother Callisto. Due to this, he sets out and makes his way through Atlantis, but Poseidon does try to set some obstacles in his way. However, the ghost of Sparta finds his weak mother and tells him that Deimos was taken to the domain of death, where he had been tortured for years by Thanatos, the god of death. She also tries to reveal to Kratos who his father is, but in doing so turns into a beast that Kratos unfortunately needs to kill. Before leaving for Sparta, Kratos freed the Titan Thera, who then brought destruction to Atlantis, and on the path there he encounters Thanatos' daughter and kills her. After a long perilous journey much like the rest of them, he makes it to Death's domain and finds his brother. But because of how long it took Kratos to finally find him after all these years, Deimos grew enraged, and the two fight. But this comes to a halt as Thanatos steps in and tries to end Deimos as revenge for the death of his daughter, but he fails and Kratos saves his brother. The siblings make amends and tackle Thanatos together, though before Thanatos meets his demise, so does Deimos, who Kratos later buries. Kratos then returns to his throne. From there, he continues to lead the Spartans into conquering Greece. He even ascends down to aid them in his god form, but the gods do not like his tampering one bit. So, Athena sends an eagle to shrink him down and then brings to life the Colossus of Rhodes. Zeus then sends the blades of Olympus down to crush the Colossus, which Kratos then uses. However, this was all a trick to strip him of his powers, making him mortal once again. In his weakened state, Zeus appears from that eagle form and kills Kratos in order to stop the prophecy from taking place.
The cycle ends here.
Kratos gets sent to the underworld yet again, but also escapes again. But before he drew his last breath, the Titan Gaia called out to him and made a deal to help him take down Zeus as the prophecy foretold. Hopping onto the winged horse Pegasus, Kratos collects a number of items on his journey like he does in every game, and eventually goes head-to-head, or thread-to-thread, with the Sisters of Fate. After defeating them, he enters through a portal which sends him back to the moment where Zeus is about to kill him, and surprise attacks Zeus unexpectedly. After a long battle ensues, and just as Kratos is about to deliver the final blow to Zeus, Athena jumps in front, sacrificing herself for the sake of Zeus and all of Olympus. She also reveals that Zeus was his father all along. Ignoring Athena's sacrifice, Kratos calls upon the Titans and allies himself with them to take down Olympus once and for all. Kratos and his Titan army march, or climb rather, up Mount Olympus. They wage war on the gods, and the gods follow suit. Kratos then takes on the god of the sea, and finally snaps his neck. Poseidon's death causes a flood that ends most of humanity. After that, Kratos makes it to the top and reaches Zeus, who strikes him and Gaia down. As they attempt to hold on, Kratos requests Gaia to help him, but she tells him that he was never anything more than a pawn and lets him fall to his death. Yes, he ends up in the underworld yet again. There he meets Athena, who has been brought to a higher existence, so she's pretty much a Force ghost. She grants him the Blades of Exile, and Kratos is confused as to why she suddenly wants to help him and Zeus when she died for him, but she keeps her reasoning rather vague and chalks it up to,
I see truth where I did not before.
Before confronting Hades, Kratos meets the smith god Hephaestus and his daughter Pandora. She asks Kratos to help free her, but he finds that too burdensome. Once Kratos finally encounters Hades, he reminds him that he killed his wife Persephone, his niece Athena, and now his brother Poseidon. But that means nothing to Kratos, and he adds Hades' name to his list. Moving forward, Kratos encounters Gaia hanging off a cliff, who then pleads to Kratos to help her even after her betrayal. But he does no such thing, and he actually causes her to fall. Kratos presses on, and continues to take names like Helios, Hermes, and his half-brother Hercules. And with every kill of his, he is granted a weapon or an ability from them that is useful on his journey. Along the way, he finds Pandora's box once again, and Athena explains the powers that lay inside in greater detail. She tells him that the box was created in order to contain the evils left from the battle against the Titans. But when Kratos opened it, it unleashed those evils and further corrupted the gods. Although that specific detail you learn later, and what she actually thought at this point was that it was within Kratos. Returning to Hephaestus, he tells him the reason why he is imprisoned there. Because after Ares' death, Zeus blamed him for the box he had created, and thus took Pandora away. He explains that Pandora is actually a key that took a life of its own, in the form of a child. He also tells him the reason Zeus blames him in the first place is because he lied about where the safest place to store the box would be in order to protect her. Hephaestus then asks Kratos to help find him the Olympus stone, to help him craft yet another weapon, to help him take down Zeus and find Pandora. Kratos agrees, but instead encounters the Titan Kronos, who is angry about Gaia's death and being banished to the pits of Tartarus due to Kratos' actions, and thus attempts to kill him. But at this point, we already know how that ends. Angered, Kratos heads back and gives Hephaestus the material he needs, but it turns out it was a trick after all, to get Kratos killed in hopes of being absolved by Zeus and having his daughter returned to him. Of course he fails, but in his dying breath, requests Kratos save Pandora.
Please, spare her. Pandora, forgive me.
Going through the labyrinth, he finds a drunk Hera, wife of Zeus and mother of Ares, who calls Pandora a whore. This gets Kratos mad, and he very easily snaps her neck. Kratos eventually finds Pandora, but when Zeus finally arrives, Pandora ends up having to sacrifice herself to put out the flame of Olympus. Unfortunately, opening the box does nothing, as it is already empty. Kratos had already unleashed it all. Father and son go head-to-head one last time, and Kratos finally kills Zeus using something that Athena had hid in the box and was within Kratos all along since he first opened it, the power of hope. With Olympus fallen, Athena then demands Kratos to relinquish that power to her, but instead he stabs himself with the blade of Olympus and gives back hope to humanity. She then pulls the blade out, and Kratos seemingly meets his end. That is until the post-credits scene reveals a cliff with a blood trail and no body in sight. Many years have passed since the events of the last game. Kratos is now in a land far from Sparta, and I know, some of the events that occurred that bridge the gap between the games are covered in the comics, but for the sake of the video I am solely focusing on the games. The game opens with Kratos and his son Atreus preparing a funeral pyre for his second wife Laufey, or Faye for short. Her dying wish was for her ashes to be carried to the highest peak of the 9 realms. Setting her ablaze, Atreus is gifted her knife, and Kratos then tells him to go fetch his bow. Kratos wants to test the boy's hunting skills, which aren't well seasoned to say the least. They stumble upon a troll, which Kratos takes down, but this makes Atreus rage at the corpse, causing him to cough. Seeing Atreus lacking the skills or the restraint, Kratos ultimately decides he is not ready for the journey ahead. Upon returning to their homestead, they suddenly are attacked by an unknown visitor who, Kratos, a once murdering machine, was reluctant to fight. Kratos then supposedly killed this tattooed, bearded stranger who cannot feel any pain inflicted on him.
I can't feel any of this.
Kratos goes to check on his son and decides it is no longer safe here and they need to leave. On their journey, they encounter new enemies unfamiliar to any of the ones that we had seen in previous games. Well, obviously, new settings, new characters, new everything. They also meet the Dwarven brothers Brock and Sindri, who upgrade your gear and weapons throughout the duration of the game. Also important to note, they have a very rocky relationship, almost as if they have an axe to grind amongst each other. The weapon Kratos now primarily wields is the Leviathan axe, which was once Faye's. Moving forward, Kratos and Atreus see a boar in their sights, so Kratos uses this as an opportunity, as a lesson, and to try to improve Atreus' hunting skills. Following the boar leads them to the Witch of the Woods, Freya. It turns out that this boar is the last of its kind, and thus they try to help Freya heal it and repair what they had done. While sending Atreus off to find some herbs, she uses the opportunity to reveal that she knows of Kratos' true nature, to which he then gets defensive about. Kratos and his son then take a boat to the path of the mountain. On the way, they stop at a statue of Thor, and Atreus deciphers the runes, which then leads them to the meeting of Jormungandr, the World Serpent, who seems very intimidating but turns out to be friendly towards them. Reaching the mountain is not as easy as it seems, however. There is a black smoke they cannot pass through without the pure light of Alfheim. Freya then leads them to the realm of Alfheim using the Bifrost. The two journey through Alfheim to retrieve the light. This allows them to finally pass through to reach Midgard's Peak, where they hear the voice of the same stranger from earlier, along with Thor's sons, Modi and Magni, interrogating a man trapped in a tree. But once the coast is clear, they approach the trapped man, who reveals himself to be
Mimir, smartest man alive.
He tells them that this is unfortunately not the highest peak that they sought, and rather, the highest peak is actually in Jotunheim, which is not the easiest realm to get to, as the gate there was blocked off by the Norse gods Odin and Thor. Not all hope is lost, however, because Mimir knows of another way to get there. He just has one small request: cut off his head and bring it to Freya to revive. They take the head there, but before leaving, Freya notices that Atreus was gifted mistletoe arrows by Sindri, who gave them for saving him from a dragon they killed. But without further explaining why, she tells them it is dangerous and throws them into the fire, save for a single piece of an arrow that is strapped to Atreus. Continuing their quest and making contact with the World Serpent, they learn that they need to find a special chisel that will carve the rune that will lead them to the gateway by way of Tyr's vault. Modi and Magni appear as roadblocks, but they make short work of them. Though Magni gets killed, Modi retreats. The three then make it back to the boat and head to Tyr's vault, and naturally along the way, Mimir continues telling his stories, which he does whenever you hop inside the boat, just as often as Atreus deciphers messages throughout the game. Anyway, upon entering the vault, Modi drops in with a surprise attack, but in a fit of rage, Atreus goes to attack him, but that forces the sickness he had for years to return, causing him to faint. Kratos musters up his strength to stop Modi by using a Spartan rage, thus Modi retreats once again. Kratos then returns to Freya, and she tells him that this is because his godhood is fighting inside of him. To cure this, Kratos needs to get the heart of the keeper that protects the bridge of the damned in Helheim. He agrees, but he needs to make a short trip home because he cannot exactly waltz in with the Leviathan axe. That won't do the trick. On the way there, however, Athena decides to plague his mind a bit, and once he uncovers the Blades of Chaos that he rebinds to himself, she reminds him that he cannot escape his past.
You will always be a monster.
I know. But I am your monster no longer.
He then leaves for Helheim and fights his way through until he encounters the troll he was looking for. He downs the troll and pulls his heart out. Upon returning and curing Atreus, Kratos finally tells him the truth, that they are both gods. They then head back to the vault and collect the rune, but Kratos hands Atreus his knife and tells him about the responsibility of being a god.
We are not men. We are more than that. The responsibility is far greater by the discipline, the self-control of the one who wields it. That is where the true strength of a warrior lies. You must never forget that.
Yeah, well, actually he does shortly after, because now he feels powerful and starts getting a god complex.
We're sick of hearing about little people's little problems!
This god complex takes over so much so that he doesn't hesitate to kill a helpless Modi, which Kratos then gets angered about as he didn't show restraint at all. They make their way back to the mountain, but in an encounter with Baldur, the stranger, they accidentally destroy the gateway and seemingly their only chance to get to Jotunheim. The fight leads them back to Helheim, but they get separated in the process. On their way out, Atreus realizes how he has been acting and comes to his senses. Meanwhile, we see a vision of Baldur talking to his mother, Freya, and here we learn that she put a spell on him to protect him from any harm. But this proves to be a curse, as Baldur cannot actually feel anything at all. We also see a vision of the moment that Kratos killed his father that teaches Atreus about the cycle of offspring killing their parents. They then make it back and figure out that Tyr has a secret chamber that will lead them to their goal. They task the Dwarven brothers, who have finally made up, to make them a key to get into the chamber, and then later enter the World Serpent's mouth and collect Mimir's other eye that will ultimately help open the gate. Before leaving, however, they get stopped by Baldur once again. They fight to the death, but nothing really seems to affect Baldur as he doesn't feel a thing. That is until Atreus finds his Achilles heel, so to speak, or hand in this case, and pierces it with the arrow shard he had been carrying, which ends up lifting his curse. They then continue to clash, but in between the fight, however, Freya attempts to step in and stop it, but Baldur is persistent and eventually decides to try and kill her, as he never forgave her for what she did to him. Though before he is successful, Kratos snaps his neck and breaks the cycle.
The cycle ends here. Must be better than this.
This upsets Freya, and she then promises that they will face her wrath. The two finally journey through the gate, complete their quest, and return home. But not before we discover that Faye had her secrets of her own too. Turns out she was a frost giant, and Atreus was actually supposed to be named Loki. Mimir also tells them that Ragnarok is coming much sooner than anticipated, in 3 years to be exact, rather than the 100 as expected. In the post-credits scene, they finally return home, and Atreus sees a vision of yet another god coming for them. Thor, Odin's son, himself. And that leads us to God of War Ragnarok. I hope you enjoyed this recap. Remember to leave a like, tell me about your favorite moment in the series if you have played the games. Remember to subscribe, ring the bell, and I will see you guys soon. Enjoy Ragnarok!